Hello and welcome to the big picture. The heat of electioneering in the country has resulted in many questions, some pretty basic, cropping up once again. The leaked video of Aam Party leader Shazia Ilmi appealing to some Muslim leaders to support her party and in the bargain talking about their secularism and communalism has kicked up a controversy. The questions which come out of that video, which has been disapproved by the Aam Party, are important enough to be discussed. One of it is how Muslims have been too secular and have been voting out of fear, and how there is a need to be more communal and to think of their own interests. These are the questions which have come up out of the video. There have been discussions in this country about how Muslims have been used as a vote bank and political pawns. So today we will discuss all this in the context of the present election and the voting behavior of the Muslims and the larger issues of how the community looks at itself in political terms. To discuss this, I have with me Wajahat Habibullah, former chairman of the National Minorities Commission, Kamal Mitra Chenoy, professor at the JNU and an Aam Party member, Dr. Azim Ahmad Khan of Global Center for Inclusion and Development, and Saba Naqvi, political editor, Outlook magazine. Welcome to all of you. Mr. Habibullah, I would like to come to you first. This whole, some of the questions which have cropped up out of this video, and these are it's become controversial. But do you agree that some of the questions which have come out of it are important enough that we need to discuss it in a larger context?
Well, I think it needs to be discussed in order to place it in context. This whole question of a vote bank. Yes. I think the Muslim community is no bank. There are, in a democracy, in any democracy, there are certain interest groups.
Right.
And those interest groups are, yes, certain interest groups may be motivated by religion if the issue which is coming up for discussion is an issue that concerns the community, but they'll be largely motivated by their social interests. Because a Muslim, the large section of the Muslim community are the weavers. They would have their interest. There are a large section who like the Bohras and others who are in business, and their interest is things like interest-free banking. So there will be different interests of different sections of the Muslim community, just like anybody else. So I think that you really need to look at this, and I think that the role played by the media and even by the political leadership in this matter has not been constructive. I think that what we really need to do is to look at the Muslim community and all communities in their social context, and then see how you're addressing the issues concerning the particular social grouping which has a particular interest. The students now, for example, among the Muslims, they will have their own interest. Are they getting their admissions? Are they getting the educational facilities? And education is playing a very major role in the Muslim interest today. So I think that these issues are really issues that need to be addressed. But then to cloak the whole community as one sort of monolith is not only wrong from the ethical point of view, but is also inaccurate in my view.
Let me get Dr. Kamal Mitra Chenoy. Dr. Chenoy, you think that your party while disapproving what Shazia said, has taken into consideration some of the issues which have been raised there? Do you think in the larger context, not just Aam Party, but every political party needs to look at these issues? What Mr. Habibullah is talking about, that they have social interests, not necessarily religious interests.
Well, I'd like to take up the point that Mr. Habibullah made about this term vote bank.
Right.
It is a denigrative term. It is an insulting term that some communities as a whole have no variety of views and are like sheep being taken to the polls. And this is used mainly for minorities.
Right.
Secondly, I think that when one talks of communalism and secularism, one must be extremely precise in what one says, because this is a very diverse country, very plural country, and statements have been made that those who are for secularism should go to Pakistan, etc. So I think that is also something that should be looked at, because this country is founded on secularism, on pluralism, on democracy, and it would be a shame if during elections its structure is weakened in any way.
Okay, Azim, the question is, when Shazia says that in a rhetorical way, I would think that, you know, you people have been too secular all these days. You allowed yourself to be, you know, led by people. Try to be a little communal now. Think of your own interests. Vote in your own interest. Is there something wrong there?
Yes, I mean, I'm not sure what exactly she said. I have seen some media reports.
No, how do, forget what she said, how do you receive it?
You know, this is, I think, worst thing to say, especially, you know, understanding the repercussions. In a democratic society, we need to include majority, minority, and every section of the society, rich and poor. And we have seen a trend, especially this election, that, you know, there is relentless dehumanization of Muslims. It seems as if we are going to elect a Muslim prime minister in this country. I mean, why? I mean, see today's newspapers. I mean, you will see all news related, whether it is hate speech, whether it is voting pattern, or whether you know, a leader saying something in the presence of a prime ministerial candidate. It's all related to Muslims. They are, you know, 12, 13, 14% of this country. And in a democratic society, elections are a small part of the whole democratic process. Absolutely. And through elections, through ensuring, you know, participation of minorities, every democratic country or system ensures that a pluralism is contained, that pluralism sustains, and minorities feel free to participate in this process. It is a participatory government.
Fine, but, you know, as Mr. Habibullah was pointing out, the question is, do political parties, you know, take Muslims as part of the whole? You know, there has been, every political party has been guilty of it, whether you like it or not. Ever since independence, we have seen using them as vote banks. And the point is, Muslims have also allowed themselves to be used as vote banks. Would you agree with that?
Unfortunately, Muslims got into this trap since independence. I mean, we need to go back and see the history. And what happened in 1947, you know, India became independence, and then there is a creation of Pakistan. And creation of Pakistan was based on two-nation theory. And we know that, you know, those who believed in two-nation theory, they went to Karachi, they left this country. And those who decided to live here, they wanted to be part of this country, and it was their choice.
Right.
And those chose to stay here, they were actually, if you see Indian political scenario from 47 to 90s, you will see that, you know, they were in a way, you know, facing a blame that Muslims are responsible for the division of the country. And in some ways, you know, our previous generations, they accepted that, you know, we need to live as, you know, second-grade citizen. But 1990 onwards, I mean, we are not that generation. We are equal citizens.
No, I think Azim, Mr. Habibullah is disagreeing with what you say, apparently.
Well, you see, the point is that, yes, I'm glad that Azim Sahab has raised the question of partition and independence. Certainly, the partition, and I might say, I think it is generally accepted now by every Indian, whether Muslim or Hindu or anyone, that partition was a major blunder and a tragedy in our history. That is accepted by all. But the fact that what Azim Sahab said, that we agreed that we should be second-class citizens, certainly not. I mean, certain sections may have. Yes, and certain sections did feel like that. But there were also large sections which did not feel like that. And there were those who felt, do you think that Maulana Azad considered himself a second-rate citizen? Do you think that Zakir Hussain considered him a second-rate citizen? Do you think that my own father, who set up the National Defence Academy, which has trained a series of commanders-in-chief, considered himself a second-rate citizen? No. But I think that we all considered ourselves part of this nation which we had to build. But yes, I would agree that the partition of the country was a mortal blow to the Muslim community, which comprised 35% of a unified India and was reduced to about 10% and reduced into 3 countries. So that part, of course, was a tragedy, and we need to get out of it. And I think we need to recognize that that was a blunder, and we must now move on.
Saba, you know, when Shazia says this, looking at
I don't want to talk about Shazia. I'll just say what you're talking about the Muslim community. Shazia thinks she made a silly statement. I don't even think it deserves to be talked about very much.
But
it
this
was
is
a very jumbled.
But is this, no, one second.
Girish, there is a crisis.
Is this the way? This has been the way the political parties have approached Muslims. Would you agree with that?
No, Shazia, these are amateurs. This is not. I mean, they have become a political party. They've shown a lot of promise. She's an amateur girl who in a private thing said stupid thing. It is actually confusing to try and understand that statement. I don't want to go there. There is a crisis about secularism within India.
Right.
All right. The crisis emanates, it's possibly, I don't want to get into partition and independence and all. The Muslim community has been approached through clerics. It started with the Congress doing it. And they continue to do. It happens for a long time.
So you're saying politicians have approached Muslims through clerics?
Systematically, you have approached the Muslim community through clerics. You have created structures like the All India Muslim Personal Law Board. You have stacked it with a certain kind of Muslim. You have given patronage to a certain kind of Muslims. You have created those structures, and there's been they've sort of spawned the importance of the cleric, who actually doesn't have very much importance. So you have this visual image of parties going into mullahs and Maulanas, which feeds off the whole idea of Hindutva and Hindu mobilizing. So, you know, and this has been one of the great tragedies. So, if what happened with Shazia yesterday, I don't know the details, and I really think, you know, it's not even particularly important. There is a larger thing at play over here about this Imam Bukhari in Delhi, running to him. I've just been to Bareilly. People are running to the clerics over there, and some of them, the influence has grown.
Rajnath Singh has gone to the Shia cleric.
Yeah, but that's still a minor one. Then in Western UP, the Deobandis and Bareilwis, they have their competing areas. All of this has been done with the notion that Muslims are somehow, they're kept in this lovely museum with little skull caps and, you know. So that is the way we have treated this community. So there is a crisis staring us in the face about our secularism.
Right.
That is, you know, sort of what I think.
Okay, yeah.
You know, Wajahat Sahab, while referring Maulana Azad, Zakir Hussain Sahab or his own legendary father, I agree that, you know, they didn't live like second-grade citizen. But he is talking about, you know, the leadership being part of elite, you know, and powerful people in India. I was referring to common Muslims in India. And unfortunately, Muslims in India were taken for granted for quite some time by secular forces, by communal forces, and by people who were in power.
And I think Saba has put her finger on the reason, because it was assumed that the common Muslim, not my father, not Maulana Azad, not Zakir Hussain, that this kind of person would entirely follow the cleric. What the cleric uttered was something that was religious. This is not correct.
This monolithic, you know, entity which has been assumed, and it has been the political parties have addressed this monolithic entity, but how far have the Muslims themselves been responsible for, you know, creating this kind of an image in the minds of people? Mr. Habibullah?
Well, you see, I think that partly the reason for the reason that he is mentioning, the clerics were able to also project themselves among the Muslim community as those who protected the Muslim community, and therefore the people who had the influence with the government. Now, I would not really blame necessarily the Congress party for this. This is a tradition that goes before partition. Well before, with the growth of the national movement.
So then we can also get into the Khilafat movement, but you know, we'll really go
No, that's right.
Therefore,
no, I'm only talking about, let's just not say, it is something that has had an evolutionary process of its own. You go right back to 1857, 1858, and how the British sought to overcome the antipathy of Muslims to their rule at that time. So it's no use going into all that. This is an old tradition. We need to break out of it. The fact is that the common Muslim in their own homes, if some Maulana pronounces something which they consider absurd, will say it's rather absurd. But they considered this because of the fact of the historical and other reasons, and the partition and all that, which of course Saba doesn't want to talk about, but rioting and all these kind of things. The point is that our country really needs to be ashamed, not only in terms of the riots which have affected Muslims, but Sikhs and Christians, others, Kashmiri Pandits. All these things have happened in our country, a secular democratic country. But that, because it happened also among the Muslims, Muslims, and there was this background of partition and their patriotism being suspect, that they tended to rely on these people as their sort of protectors and the persons who would project their image. This is now in something of the really that is going into the past, and I think the political leadership needs to recognize
I don't think they even rely on these people. That is the beauty of it. They
That's
don't.
right.
But our minds are brainwashed. When you say other Muslims to blame, which Muslims are you talking about? The stupid Maulanas with their beards who are ready to go on every channel just to say the most ridiculous things. They are anxious to show that they are leaders of the community. No, the media is also complicit in that.
And the media is
anxious because their little mohalla influence grows.
Azim, my question is that, when I say how much, to what extent they have been responsible by allowing these kind of clerics to take the center stage and not coming out in the open, has there been a problem there? And the important question, the basic question of my program today, and allowed themselves to be used as political pawns.
Let us not blame the poor community. Let us blame the political parties, ideologues, intellectuals who have actually, systematically did not allow a genuine Muslim leadership to emerge actually. In certain states, you see the community which has 10, 8 or 6% of population doesn't have a single representative in assembly. In 14 years, if you see, I'm talking about one state where Muslims are 10% of the population. There has not been.
You're talking of Gujarat.
There is one political party in government. There were 3 parliamentary elections. There were 3 assembly elections, and they have not given a single ticket. And this party is ruling. I mean, what sort of governance are we looking for?
Let me get Dr. Chenoy in on this. Dr. Chenoy, to what extent are the political parties responsible for this state of affairs, and to what extent, what Azim is talking about, lack of representation in many of the states in this country, who is responsible?
Well, I'd like to make just one point to begin with, which we've not touched.
Yes.
I think this term majority community is ridiculous, because Hindus are divided, Dalits, OBCs, Kashmiri Pandits, Kannadiga Pandits, etc. So this is a politically motivated
nobody has mentioned the majority here, at least in this debate today.
But you should mention the majority, because it is from the majority that a lot of pressure comes on the Muslims. In all the riots when Muslims have been killed, who's been present? And I also think it is necessary for the media to be more outspoken when there are incidents like Muzaffarnagar and all that.
Right.
So that the truth comes out of what is happening to Muslims, what is happening to them in the relief camps. There is not enough coverage in this secular country of the contribution of Muslims, of how they have suffered, how they have surpassed that, the challenges they face, and the failure of the secular parties to help them get stronger and more self-reliant.
Okay, Saba, for a long time in this country, when you talk of politics, Congress has been some kind of a default option for the Muslims in this country, for a long time. Now, do you think that this spawning of different political parties, which has given them an option, has created this confusion and created some kind of a situation where people are trying to use them in their own way?
No, I mean, what was the Congress doing? Everybody is trying to use. Girish, may I suggest a term in place of vote banks? There's a term, because I wrote once for a foreign publication, and they got back. They said, "What are vote banks?" They replaced it with voter blocks.
Okay.
And I thought that was a little more civilized. Voter blocks. It was and so let's presume we are talking about voter blocks. It's normal in a democracy to mobilize people.
Right.
Mobilizing, you can call it polarize for different causes, right? When we talk about communal polarizing, we are only talking about to gather people over their caste identity as Hindus against Muslims.
I was coming to that. How is it different from a caste-based party? We have several caste-based parties in this country trying to mobilize their own caste, and some political party trying to mobilize Muslims. How are the two different? Mr. Habibullah?
Well, you see, there is no difference. The point is that here you are reducing your political appeal to the narrowest and the basest possible interest, whereas the facts show, whether you are scheduled caste, whether you are Yadav, whether you are Jat, whether you are Rajput, whatever you are, or Muslim or Brahmin, that it doesn't necessarily mean that you will choose a person because you happen to be in that community. It will depend upon what that person is offering your particular social group. And therefore, it is important to look at our
what you are saying sounds good. Doesn't it sound a little utopian?
No, well, unless you think in terms of a utopia, you're not going to be able to get there.
Okay.
You know, democracy is
first, what he's talking of is, what he's saying is, first he said it in the beginning also, that Muslims should not be seen as a monolithic entity. They have their own social interests and they work according to, their aspirations are according to their social interests. But in reality, do political parties take them in the way he means it at all? Because they are, the way the political parties have approached the Muslims is as a monolithic entity, right?
Yeah, I mean, that is an ideal to be achieved or to aspire for.
Yeah.
The reality of India is that our politicians contest these elections, political parties contest these elections, they distribute tickets and they nominate people looking at caste, religion, region, etc. These are the realities of India today, and we don't see that we are moving away from these things. And so unfortunately, it dilutes the wider meaning of democracy.
Shazia, how do you move away from this?
I'm not Shazia, I'm Saba.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
I know Girish.
I was reading about Shazia and I'm sorry.
No, I know why you said it.
But the thing is, how do you move away from it? Being used as political pawns, we all accept the fact that there has been
Girish,
the Muslims. Everyone has been used, but Muslims as a monolithic entity, there has been attempts used as.
I'll give you a serious answer, Girish, to this. The problem is, you are right to an extent that you used in the sense that you advocate a fear of something.
Exactly.
And you basically go to the Muslims saying, God, that chap is going to come in unless you vote for us.
Absolutely.
And then the next guy comes and says he's going to come in unless you vote for us, right? So
this is what's been happening for years.
Hopefully the circumstances.
And in this elections context also, this question is a very major question.
So what do Muslims do?
Yes.
They don't vote for anything that they want. They vote against something that may happen to them, right?
Exactly.
That's what we're talking about.
It's more of a negative vote than a positive vote.
Those are the circumstances in many places, but there are pockets and there are occasions when Muslims are like other people also. So to carry on imagining that they're all in some frightened herd, many of them, for instance, during the Delhi election, there was this whole thing that many people wanted people to vote only for the Congress, saying ki Ahmad, many of them said no, we want to vote for something new. So I don't think that you can generalize. Similarly, then Dalits, I've travelled in UP, there was a section which was breaking from the traditional mold in Western UP and not elsewhere. So it happens to everybody. The question here that is being raised is, are the Muslims the only community which are kept on this negative, that you vote out of fear?
You vote out of fear.
Yeah. So to some extent,
Well, you see, the point is that
do you agree that for a long time this has happened in this country, that a section, if not all the Muslim community, there is a great section of Muslim community have been voting out of fear created by political parties?
No, the appeal, what Saba was saying, not Shazia.
I know you almost said that.
I was about to say the same myself. Shazia is also, I have a Shazia who's a niece and a beloved niece. But the point was that the appeal has been made, trying to bank on their fears. Whether the Muslims have actually voted in that way is a different question.
It's a matter of conviction.
But let me qualify this. When I say that the Indians and as a community must be recognized as Indians with certain interest groups, certainly. There will be certain issues when you raise the question of the present elections. There will be certain times where there will be question of the Muslims as a community feeling that their religious interests are threatened.
Right.
The matter happened, I mean, an instance which I can give you is the demolition of the Babri Masjid,
Right.
which of course struck a universal chord all over India. But that is only in exceptional cases. It's not the case that every time the Muslim is only thinking in terms of what is the interest of his community. He or she is generally thinking in terms of what is the interest of my mohalla. I'm voting for and now you'll be glad to know, and this I've become very conscious, I don't know if Saba would agree with me, but I'm certainly very conscious of the fact, being from UP myself, that people are now becoming much more savvy. They are able to distinguish between Lok Sabha elections and assembly elections and panchayat elections. They're able to tell the difference. अगर इसको हम देंगे वोट तो हमें क्या मिलने वाला, ये क्या कर सकते हैं? And they're also asking questions. You have the RTI now. Here in Delhi, you have organizations, Satarkta Andolan is there, which calls people and then it calls MLAs and MPs. Here, these are the things you promised. What have you done? Please explain. So, these are the movements forward, and these are what need to be cashed in on, rather than trying to play on the fear psychosis of certain sections of our community, which, as Saba says, it's not only concerning Muslims, certainly tribals, scheduled castes, and all the vulnerable sections of our society.
But you know,
I also have another suggestion, which is very serious, which people ignore, is that there is a whole lot, and this
Hey,
is
by
a
the way,
pet
my name
theme.
is not Shiza, and I've been left out.
I'm coming to you, Mr. Chenoy.
Okay, I just want to say that there is a whole sort of wealth with the Muslim community called the Waqf properties, which is one of the largest, and their own leaderships are sitting on them, doing nothing, encroaching on them, making little petty corruptions over there. So, some of it you also have to hold some of it is petty, some of it is colossal. So, you also have to hold the leadership that has been spawned in collaboration with the so-called secular parties responsible for many things.
Mr. Chenoy, I'll come to you, Azim. Mr. Chenoy? Mr. Chenoy, can you hear me?
Has he walked off?
Mr. Chenoy? Mr. Chenoy, can you hear me?
His sound is gone.
I think there's a problem with the... Mr. Chenoy, can you hear me? Okay.
Girish,
Azim, yes.
Girish,
We are running out of time, Azim, quickly.
Like any marginalized or poor communities in India, majority of Muslims, I mean over 80% of Muslim population is very poor and marginalized, and very poor in terms of any human development indicator, if you want to say. Their issues are education, their issues are development, their issues are health,
jobs,
their issues are employment. But unfortunately, in every election, they are reduced to a kind of bank. Sometimes in reaction to majority communalism, sometimes because of secular politics, they are reduced to a kind of
secular
bank.
Politics, sometimes communal politics.
Both, and both are responsible for the plight of Muslims in India today.
Mr. Habibullah, last words too quickly. Do you agree that both secular politics and communal politics have resulted in this kind of a situation where the Muslims have been reduced to a vote bank?
The Muslims of India are such a large community that even if I were to agree, I would not agree that 80% of them are in that condition. But even if one were to agree
with 50,
that even 20% of that is a larger section of the Indian population than many of the other minorities. It is there are opportunities for people from the Muslim community to make their mark, and they are making their mark. There is a question of they're now trying to provide the leadership to the rest of the country. The leadership does not mean that you get yourself elected.
Okay.
Leadership will come from different ways, and this leadership is coming. It's not that it's not coming.
Okay.
So I think that there is
my last
question
words,
of
very
hopelessness.
quickly. You think this election will be anyway different as far as the Muslims are concerned from the past?
No, I don't think so. I think it's been the same, and I don't think there's anything particularly terrifying which is driving them also. There is a general, people always vote in terms of protecting their interests, that's fine, but it's not as if the Muslims are sitting around completely terrified either.
Yeah, I can hear you.
I think on that note, we are completely run out of time. Sorry, Mr. Chenoy, we completely run out of time. There is a general consensus that there is a problem where Muslims have been treated as a vote bank and have been treated as political pawns, but hopefully we will see changes happening in the coming days. As Mr. Habibullah says that he can see some change, and we hope there will be some change in the coming days and years. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Wajahat, Habibullah, Azim Khan, Saba, Naqvi, and Dr. Kamal, Mitra, Chenoy. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on The Big Picture same time tomorrow.